So we have this lovely graphic here, Picc Vic project. You can see that Cellneck has been replaced by the Greater Manchester Council. We've had some changes. The GMC is here, arguably with an equally based sort of graphic ident. I think this is awesome. However, let us look at this Department of the Environment, which had at that time had gobbled up the Department for Transport. Sorry. So I'm writing. This is a letter from the D of E, including the transport sector section, writing to Manchester, to the GMC. Let's see. I'm writing to tell you that I'm unable to approve the infrastructure grant application in respect of the Picc Vic tunnel. I regret having to do this. I know the importance which the PTA, that's the Passenger Transport Authority, it's a kind of an element of the Passenger Transport Executive that had been brought in 1968, and indeed the Metropolitan County attached to the project, and I appreciate the hard work which has been put in by the PTE and others to reach the present position. Basically, this was oh look, that's right, Treasury say no. Now, when does this sound familiar? So there we are. Who's this prick? The Chancellor of the Exchequer. Oh, okay, so it's it's a Treasury situation. Well, funny that. So yes, this gets binned. Picc Vic, a solution to improve both suburban and long distance capacity by splitting those services out, gets canned off. And indeed, that's 1973. God, that was loud. That's 1973. Sorry for deafening everyone's ears. GMC don't give up. They keep pushing harder, and they spend more money on more graphical stuff to kind of point out how critical this project is. There's an interesting little comment here from the editor of Railway Gazette International that I think summarises a lot of what we've talked about in the past. So let me just read this. This is the editor of Railway Gazette International, still extant. I've written for them. That's kind of cool. But back in 1974, they had this to say. Picc Vic planning has also been bedeviled by the rail... Actually, I need to try and do Manchester. Picc Vic planning has also been bedeviled by the Railway Board's determination to give absolute priority to intercity passengers. If local trains might conflict with projected high-speed schedules for 1988, the PTE must pay now for extra tracks and signalling. This kind of thinking has inflated the cost of the Picc Vic scheme to hundreds of millions of pounds. I don't know why I've made the editor of the Railway Gazette International from Manchester, but in my slightly dodgy Mancunian accent. But let's face it, probably a Londoner. I don't know, actually. Who was the editor at the time? Nick, if you're listening, tell me who your previous incumbent was in 1974. Thank you, Nick Kingsley. Anyway, so that's a really interesting conflict here. It's that conflict between intercity passengers. This is a thing I've talked about with beaching. If you remember, this is barely 10 years after Reshaping had been released. And what have I talked about? What have we said in Rail Natter? The main problem with Reshaping and all the attitudes around it was the prioritisation of intercity services at the expense, using existing infrastructure, therefore entirely at the expense of suburban capacity. PTE is Passenger Transport Executive. So Passenger Transport Authority is kind of the operating arm of a passenger transport executive. Passenger transport executives, there's an episode in it, but go back to Martha's episode, actually, where Martha talks about the passenger transport executives. Martha, who is in the chat and can answer even more detailed, I'm sure. Passenger transport executives created by Barbara Castle in the 1968 Transport Act. A good idea, among other things. Basically, PTE, PTA are the devolved transport entities. In this case, the board is National British Rail and causing problems here. You can kind of understand why. Their strategy is prioritise the profitable bit, which is the long distance service. They don't have any infrastructure to allow them to do anything different. So in a way, this isn't so much an indictment on British Rail, more on the broad policy that came out of Reshaping. So 1973, and it continues to be cancelled. And indeed, in 1977, the final, basically there's a political change in the GMC, the Tories get in, and they change priority. And indeed, they change priority to push things towards, the political change facilitates a change in who is looking at some form of solution in Manchester, and British Rail pick up. So good old British Rail, here they are. I should have done the hallelujah thing there for BR. BR in 1977 pick up an alternative which is called the Castlefield Curve. the Castlefield curve. And the intent of this is to provide the same connectivity through, but crucially it only involves, well, British Rail start realising and pointing out that there is some serious heavy infrastructure work to do at the approaches, the kind of the outside of Manchester approaches to both Victoria and Piccadilly. And so these guys come in again, and what do they say? Oh, they say, no, that's the end of that.